The new numbers are here. The new numbers are here. Well, it's not that big of a deal, but we're talking Hawkeye football. We're talking about the newcomers and what numbers they're going to be where. Updated roster for Iowa football. Plus, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic stops by all today. Locked on Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Come in, I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have finished up, sports, they just stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We start today with some football talk and the newcomers coming into Iowa football this season. Now, many of these freshmen are not going to be players that we anticipate to see out on the field this season. It is going to be certainly some guys just getting their feet wet, maybe some special teams duty. We see plenty of that, but we also have the incoming freshmen, also the transfers that have come in this season. Brendan Sullivan at the forefront of that, the backup or possibly starting quarterback for the Hawkeyes coming up this fall. But let's just start here. And this is something goofy. It's something strange, but I pride myself and have for, the better part of 30 years now of trying to know every guy on the roster, one way or the other. And when Meter knocked in the field goal a year ago against Nebraska, I felt dumb because as he was trotting out on the field, I said, who the hell is this guy? I don't know who it is. It is something that in a way kind of annoyed me. Not knowing a guy that proved to be a local legend, at least for an afternoon after hitting the game winner and going to go on for a long time. It's just those little things. And so the new numbers are here. You got the roster. I like to be that guy in my group at Kinnick Stadium. Who's that guy? I know it off the top of your head. You don't have to have a roster in front of me. That's something I pride myself in. So this is maybe a bigger deal to me than it is others. But most importantly, this gives us a jumping off point to talk about a lot of these players. Let's start with Brendan Sullivan, as he has been issued number one. That's right. He'll be wearing number one for the Hawkeyes. I'm trying to think of number one's playing the quarterback position. He'll be sharing the number one with Xavier Wampa, who is back this season in the defensive backfield, and you're starting safety back there alongside Quinn Schulte. More newcomers. This one, I didn't realize that Jalen Watson, he's listed at 6'4", the incoming freshman, and wearing number 3. He's on the other side of the football from Caleb Brown. They'll both be wearing number 3. 6'4", 170 pounds, though, for Jalen Watson. That was definitely an eye-opener when you look at the newbies coming in. Jacob Gill, the incoming wide receiver from Northwestern. We know Iowa needs some help at the wide receiver position, and hopefully Jacob Gill will be able to provide that. He'll be wearing number 5 for the Hawkeyes this year. There is a new punter. There is also a new number 9. He is a Reese Dakin, the Australian punter that comes in. And though he won't be Tory Taylor, big shoes to fill, no doubt about it. And he'll be putting on number 9 for the Hawkeyes coming up this season. The true freshman quarterback coming in this year, James Rezar, he'll be wearing number 10, sharing the same number as Nick Jackson. Think we'll see those two guys on the field together. We'll see about James Rezar. And plenty of people have told us in the past that the likelihood of him being able to jump in right away and be a guy, he's more a developmental, easy for me to say, quarterback. And there's still some rough edges for him to iron out. There are things mechanically that he needs to work on. And remember, Rezar was not a quarterback that Tim Lester recruited himself. This was an incumbent, if you will, coming in from Florida this season. A lot of people with the size and the speed that he has thinks that there's a possibility, maybe a different position for him down the line at 6'4", 205 pounds. More of the newcomers, and we lose the great Joey the Bull, Joe Evans, out there playing defensive tackle wearing 13. We got another one, Drew Campbell. That's right, little brother of Jack Campbell, 6'4", 235, his listed weight in his freshman campaign out of Cedar Falls. And Campbell will be wearing number 13. And boy, we get another number 13 like we've seen out of the last number 13, I think we'd all sign up for that. We're not going to be able to see him for a while as he's still playing high school baseball, but Race Vanderzee, he gets number 15, the big wide receiver, 6'4", 190 pounds, and maybe Vanderzee could be that guy that suddenly is able to help out at the X position at the wide receiver group. If you're seeing 15 trotting out there for the first time coming up this fall, you say, who's that? Now you know, Reese Vanderzee. Another incoming freshman in the defensive backfield, Rashad Godfrey out of Florida, Armwood High School. He'll be wearing number 17. When I think of number 17, I think of one guy, Armelis Harrelson, who had was that who it was? Oh, now my memory is fading on me. 2002 Purdue game, had the interception. Is that who it was? No, I think it was somebody else. Now my mind is just drifting afar. Let's get back into it. Another incoming freshman out of the transfer portal, out of Colorado State, Jackson Stratton, a depth piece, 6'5", 210 pounds. Still listed as just a sophomore here in the updated roster from Iowa football, and he will be wearing number 19. Incoming linebacker with a lot of buzz, Derek Weiskopf. He will be wearing number 22, 6'3", 210 pounds. We talked about this one in the past. We gave you a little intel before the numbers were official. Brevin Dahl will be wearing number 23. He wore 15 in high school, wearing 23 because of Christian McCaffrey, his favorite NFL player. Number 26, also incoming running back. That will be Xavier Williams, as that's what he gets. Number 33, Cam Buffington, another one of that great linebacker group. Already 6'3", 225 coming in from Winfield Mount Union. Devin Van Ness, yes, you know that name. Van Ness comes in at number 35 and 6 foot 211 pounds for Van Ness. 38, this is Graham Eben, and he comes in from Rock Rapids, Central Eye, George Little Rock, 6'1", 200 pounds for the newcomer there. Here's one that I'm excited about. Chima Chineke, 6'5", 230 pounds out of Plano East. Iowa doesn't recruit Texas like they once did. However, I think Chineke has a chance to be an impactful player in this defensive line group. This defense, you talk about what they did in the front seven, both in the defensive line and the linebackers in this incoming freshman class. I think they absolutely knocked it out of the park. Another linebacker for you, Preston Reese out of Monticello, 6'2", 215 pounds. He will be wearing number 46. A couple other names for you on the offensive line. We get into the 60s, and one of those, Josh Janikowski, 6'2", 282 pounds, likely an interior offensive lineman as where he is going to go. Another one, maybe on the outside, we hope, because Iowa needs tackles. Number 68 will be Will Nolan, 6'6", 290 pounds already out of Arlington Heights for that one. Here's a newbie for you, but not a freshman, Cade Borud. Saw him play a bunch of football games when he was at Southeast Polk High School. He comes in to help solidify the middle. Could he have the kind of season that we saw last year out of a transfer interior guy? We will see on that front with what Rusty Feth did. 6'2", 305 pounds, and certainly going to add some depth inside coming in after a couple of years up at North Dakota. Another incoming offensive line, freshman number 74, that is Bodie McCaslin, 6'6", 275 pounds, and maybe the crown jewel of this recruiting class as it pertains to the offensive line. Number 79, yeah, that's a good number. Cody Fox comes in from East Buck. Few other freshmen in there of numbers. Michael Burt, 6'6", 225 pounds out of Creighton Prep in Omaha. He will be playing the tight end position. And of course, the other big tight end, Gavin Hoffman, number 89, 6'5", 220 pounds. Look, they're set at the tight end position, but if there's a young guy that's going to get his feet wet this season, alongside Lachey, alongside Addison Estrenga, don't be surprised if we see some reps this year out of Gavin Hoffman. Number 84 for a defensive lineman. That's right. It'll be Joseph Anderson. We talked about the bloodlines in past and continuing to keep that pipeline to St. Louis open. Excited about the future of Anderson. Two incoming number 84s out of the freshman class. KJ Parker, the wide receiver, also will be wearing number 84. 6 foot, 170 pounds. Parker is a big-time playmaker for the Hawkeyes. Two more to go in the incoming players coming in, and their new numbers that have been issued by Iowa football. The place kicker, Trip Woody, good merits, and also comes in from North Carolina, place that's been pretty good to Iowa. He'll wear number 92. Weird numbers for kickers, and have to love that. And finally, the last number that you can give out, he is number 99, Devin Kennedy, the son of Jimmy Kennedy, coming in from Arizona, 6'3", 240 pounds is what they have Kennedy listed at as we get ready for football. We get ready to talk with Scott Dochterman from The Athletic as we continue talking Hawkeye football here. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Look, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have finished up, in basketball, in hockey, we're getting fewer games. The sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers. That's right, not just new customers, but existing customers as well, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long, for all customers with FanDuel. So much that you can bet on. Of course, Major League Baseball, golf tournament. We got the John Deere Classic coming up. It's on the wrong side of the river, but it's still coming up in our neck of the woods over in the Quad Cities. Soccer, Euros going on. You got Copa America, though. Team USA took it in the shorts last night. Hey, we got a lot going on. We got you covered with FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get in on the offer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Joining us now, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, and a new role with The Athletic, now a national college football writer. Tell us about what the new role entails.
Yeah, thanks. I've been kind of ghosting it for a while, and we kind of formally made the announcement a few weeks ago. But, I've kind of expanded my duties, if nothing else, to where I'm going to be doing more Big Ten and less Iowa, as opposed to before where I would do a lot of Iowa, mostly Iowa, and then kind of do the Big Ten on the side in the off season, that sort of thing. And part of it is, when you get into the season, especially, then it's really difficult to kind of change your focus, and there were a lot of really good stories that I just wasn't able to get to last year because I was covering Iowa so closely. But, that doesn't mean I'm not going to cover Iowa. I mean, Iowa, I still live here. I'm still going to write about the Hawkeyes. I think they're still relevant, and they're going to be relevant this year. So it makes perfect sense for me to follow them very, very closely and write a lot about them. It's just I'm going to spread out a little bit more and not just kind of, hey, here are the top 10. Here's what lead singers from the 80s the Hawkeyes look like today.
Right.
Like that. I'll be writing about some other stories in the Big Ten, mostly Big Ten anyway.
That sounds like one of your old employers, one of the story ideas that you had to do a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did do that one.
So does this mean, Doc, that, for instance, Ohio State, Penn State, that might be a game that weekend you may cover that caliber of a game, or Michigan, Ohio State at the expense maybe? Well, Black Friday would be Nebraska and Iowa. So will you move around the Big Ten footprint throughout the season, keeping more of a focus maybe on Kinnick, et cetera, but will you move around periodically?
A little bit here and there. I can't. It's hard to say what'll happen. I mean, mainly, I think the front part of the season, I'll be mostly Iowa. There might be a weekend I might go somewhere else, but the back stretch of the season, it's going to be a lot of keeping my options open in case. Sure. I mean, let's say if Iowa's 4-3, and Missouri or Kansas State or somebody like that might be in the playoff run. I mean, it's really designed in a lot of cases for us to really get into the playoff situation because there's 12 teams now, and I'll be able to do more. And it won't be just Midwestern based. I might fly somewhere west or whatever, but primarily, I'm still gonna write a lot about Iowa. I'm not gonna. You can't take that away from me.
Gotcha. Will the Athletic replace you with a permanent Iowa writer? Do you know?
Oh no. I mean, I'm still going to do Iowa. I'll just do more of other things.
Gotcha.
So we've a lot of our beat structure has changed a little bit, and so but this also frees me up to do, say, an Iowa State story too, because I think they're going to be really good, and so I'm not necessarily, if Jack Trice Stadium's or the Jack Trice 100-year anniversary. Goes on, would have gone on this year instead, that I'd have the freedom to do that, unlike in the past.
Doc, with that, we're going to turn our attention back to Iowa and Iowa football coming up this year. Listening to you throughout our conversations leading up here, what you just said, you think Iowa is going to be very relevant. When you talk about very relevant, the conversation, Iowa goes 10-2 this year, lose to Ohio State. lose another. And it can't be against Illinois State, or it can't be against probably Maryland, but they lose, say, to Wisconsin for that second loss. A 10-2 Iowa team on the surface with the 12-team playoff looks really good. Depending on how the loss goes to Ohio State, though, that's going to be a component too. How solid is the chances, with us really not knowing how this structure is going to be, a 10-2 Iowa team getting into the college football playoff?
I would say 40%. It's going to be right on the border. I mean, they're going to be somewhere between 10 and 14, and it just kind of, it's not. And if they're 11-1, they're in. If they're 10-2, then you've got to consider all the other 10-2 teams that are like them. You know, say a Penn State, for instance. I mean, they don't play Iowa, so you got to measure Iowa's resume against Penn State or Tennessee or another, and a bunch of other teams, and then you got to also wonder if. Say Iowa State happens to win the Big 12, are they in the top 10 or are they 15? Are they, because it doesn't matter. If they win the Big 12, then they're in the playoff and get a bye, and then same thing with a Liberty or Memphis or something like that. So it really kind of depends on everybody else if you're 10-2. You don't want to put yourself in that position, but you've also put yourself in a position to where you can be very, very competitive for that spot. I mean, Ohio State's the one that we look at as a given. It's just everybody else that, Iowa State to me is one of the top 2 or 3 teams on Iowa's schedule. And I think their schedule's, fairly good, it's doable for Iowa to get to 10-2, but it's also, there's some challenges in there. Wisconsin, I think Nebraska's going to be much improved. Northwestern's not going to be an easy out. And even Troy, I think Troy was really good last year for being a G5 team. So it's holistic if it's 10-2, that's for sure.
Doc, most folks believe, and I'm one of them, that Ohio State is clearly the class of the Big Ten again this year. Who would be next in your mind? I mean, the defending champions lose their quarterback, but they bring back a whole bunch of guys. They got a new head coach as well, so you got to put that out there. Is it Michigan? Is it Penn State? Who do you think is the closest pursuer to Ohio State when it's all said and done?
I think it's Oregon. I think Oregon may be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. They've got a challenging schedule, as we know, because they do have to go to Michigan. They host Ohio State. They have, Washington, which is a huge rivalry for them. Now Washington's, and depleted to the nth degree, but, and they also play Oregon State early in the year and some other teams that are pretty good. But Oregon is stacked. Oregon is the one team that can beat Ohio State. I think those are the 2 teams that, to me, that I think you put in the playoff, and one's going to get a bye and one's going to get a home game, and then it's kind of, to be between 3 to 5 teams to whether or not you can get 1 to 2 more playoff spots. And I think Penn State would be my 3rd. Either Iowa or Michigan, my 4th, and then 5th. But then I think you got a USC, you got a Wisconsin, you've even got Nebraska that I think has the capabilities to sneak their way up there. Nebraska has the easiest schedule in the Big Ten, and they had a very, very good defense and a horrible offense, if that sounds familiar, last year. And I think they've got a chance too.
One team that we haven't talked a lot about this year, and they're not on the Iowa schedule again, as we saw that fall off a bunch during the Leaders and Legends days, was Illinois. Rivalry game. Bielema, I don't know if momentum stopped a year ago, but it certainly slowed down. There was a lot of talk about him and Ryan Walters not getting together. Altmaier back at the quarterback position. What is Illinois? Is it maybe they'll win 6 or 7 games and that's it? What, as a whole, that program, what Bielema has tried to do to build that thing up, a program that just has not been consistent in either of our lifetimes?
Yeah, that's since Dick Butkus was there. Pete Elliott as head coach. So I think Illinois, this is a big year for Brett Bielema. No question in my mind. I mean, this is year 4. And 2 years ago, it looked like they were kind of on the right path to being relevant in the Big Ten, to be competitive in the upper 3rd in that area. And last year, they took a huge step back. I mean, they were close in a couple of games, but not getting to a bowl game really matters if you're Illinois. And, Luke Altmaier played well at times last year, but really the difference was 2 years ago, they had an amazing defense left over from Lovie Smith. Some of those players, Devin Witherspoon, and then they had the twins back there, Sidney Brown and Chase Brown at running back, and some just amazing players. And then they haven't been able to replicate that, especially this year. So they've got a long ways to go. I think if their line of scrimmage play could be decent with Luke Altmaier, with Pat Bryant, who I think might be one of the best players we're not going to talk about, a wide receiver who, was fifth in touchdown pass. I think he had 8 last year. If Illinois can, win some of those close games and play decent along the line of scrimmage, I think it'll look like they're back into being in competitive territory. If not, if they don't make it to a bowl game in year 4, I think any momentum is stopped, and then it becomes hot seat territory.
Mm-hmm. What about the Gophers? What do you expect out of them? And they are on Iowa's schedule.
Yeah. They have a tougher schedule, but I also think that PJ Fleck has demonstrated that his teams can be competitive. Maybe unlike Brett at Illinois, where they're still kind of trying to build something. PJ's at least established that this program is not just a bottom feeder, that they're going to compete. And I like their quarterback. They grabbed Max Brosmer from New Hampshire, and he was the AFCA first team All-American FCS quarterback last year. Just a really good player. And we know what they're going to do up front. They've got one of the best tackles in the country, and they're going to be physical. They're going to run the ball, and then on defense, they usually play decent defense. So I think they're going to be a competitive team at minimum for a bowl game. I don't know if I see them, though, getting past like the 7-8 win territory this year, unless Brosmer just does something that I'm not not projecting, which is Heisman type season. But I think they could still be in the 7-8 win territory.
So I brought up Illinois. It just jumped out because I read your article last week talking about walk-ons and the potential that walk-ons go away. It's very difficult to wrap your mind around how this actually could happen in college football. Can you give us the nuts and bolts exactly how this potentially could look and the possibility that walk-ons are no longer a thing? And it's not just impactful to Iowa and Iowa State. I mean, you just talk about the Midwest as a whole. This is a huge, huge potential, I don't want to say landscape changing, but it is impactful for a lot of programs out there, walk-ons going away. Give us the nuts and bolts of that.
The challenge is, Trent, that they're going to go to roster sizes rather than scholarship limits and then unlimited roster size.
Mm-hmm.
So and what that number is, it hasn't been decided yet. It could be 100, it could be 110, it could be 105, something to that effect. Well, in the past, we've had 85 scholarships and then basically unlimited walk-ons. And most teams have between, right around 110, 115. So, 25 to 30 walk-ons. Well, that's all going to be gone, and you're going to have the ability to scholarship all of those players. Now, some schools won't. Some schools will. And, of course, there's a big difference. I mean, if Iowa's going to go ahead and fill 105 scholarships and Illinois is going to fill 85, well, they're going to get a humongous advantage. So I think everybody's going to try to fill those best they can. The problem is, Trent, as we see in the Midwest especially, as teams like Iowa and Iowa State and the others rely a lot on those 3-star kids from micropolitans to small towns to farm towns. And do you really know when one kid's 6'4", 235 and the other kid's 6'4", 240, who's going to be a better offensive lineman? You don't know. It's like really the difference between a 5th-round draft pick in the NFL draft and an undrafted free agent. It's not until you get to camp, or in Iowa's case, or at a college level, get them into your developmental program and see how they compete. And so there's going to be a lot of whiffs, and there's going to be a lot of really good players that end up at either FCS programs, junior college programs, NAIA schools, and but the portal will still be hopping after that, because I think what we'll see also is schools that will be more willing to depart from their players and not necessarily cut them, but encourage them that maybe they need to look for another opportunity. So it'll be a little bit more cutthroat, I think, holistically.
Doc, we're a week away from Media Days getting underway, and there's seemingly a universal topic that comes up, whether you're at SEC or Big 10 or Big 12 every year. What do you think that's going to be this year? Is it realignment? Is it NIL? Is it the court ruling? What are people in the media who want to talk to Petiti about? I'm going to talk to you, Mark, about that seemingly every commissioner is going to get asked about. Yeah,
I think it's all of those things because, the the judgment was just finalized, about 6 weeks ago, and it actually isn't finalized. It was just agreed upon. So, everybody wants to know, what does this look like? What does this mean? Just like what we talked about with scholarships and, paying these players, and what does it mean for Title IX? I mean, I think those are the big picture questions that everybody still has. And my guess is that, people still don't really know exactly what it looks like. They may have a little bit better direction than they did in May. But, mark my words, I think that when it comes to the pay for play, you've got one side that believes that it should just be based on marketability, and you have another that says it's going to be based on, male-female student-athlete ratio. And it's going to go to court either way at some point, because there's a reason why they're collectives, and it's for football and men's basketball.
Mm-hmm.
That's the primary reason, and women's basketball is kind of clipped in there too. But that's the main reason for it. So one way or the other, it's going to end up in court, and that's probably a healthy thing. But I think those are going to be issues that everybody's going to really ask about and find out if there's any more updates. I don't know about expansion. I think that's probably going to be a key thing in the ACC meetings to see kind of where everybody sits. But, when it comes to expansion and what these new programs mean for the schools and how that they'll, interject themselves into these conferences, I think that'll also be a major storyline.
Off the football path, and I know you've been watching, though not writing about WNBA and Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. What a comeback yesterday. And doing it against Diana Taurasi. Had to feel good, even battling through illness, nearly a triple-double for Caitlin Clark. I know you're watching it a ton, Doc. Just your thoughts overall as we're, halfway through the season now and looking forward to the Olympics, about the way things are going for Caitlin Clark here in year number one.
It seems to be in a little bit healthier place now than it was 3 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
And that's a good thing for them in this league, because my biggest fear was it was just going to get so toxic that it'd turn everybody away. You don't want to watch that. But I think, Caitlin's showing what she can do, and she's just a rookie. That's the funniest part I don't know that fans expected her to dominate. I think they expected her to be good, which she is, clearly very good. But I think there's a lot of people who don't like her, who are not fans of her, who are like making fun of her. And I'm like, give her another year or two, and she's going to dominate this game just as much. But I think the impact that she's had has been profound. It's maybe the greatest impact that we've seen in female sports. Yesterday, just walking off the court to a standing ovation, it shows you that how much she has elevated the profile of that league. And I think the veterans who were not necessarily in her corner right away, I think they wanted her to prove herself, but it seems like that they are gradually coming over to her side. And it seems like Indiana, for the most part, not every game, is playing better together. I still think they could use a better coach, but other than that, I do think that it's been a good run for her, and it's been fun to watch the Martinis, and tomorrow night they get to play the Aces and the Fever, so it'll be fun to watch that too.
Was she a liability defensively at Iowa? Apparently she is in the WNBA.
Yeah, a little bit.
Was she?
Yeah, she's not as. I mean, she's a good rebounder.
Yep.
And she's good at steals. But as far as, that's why Gabby Marshall would walk out of games with no points or maybe a 3-pointer, because she was in charge of guarding the best offensive player. I mean, this happens to every elite guard. I mean, ask James Harden how much defense he does on a week-by-week basis.
Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Doc, congratulations on the move up. I did not realize that. Glad you're still going to be your primary focus, at least we'll call it that, is Iowa, because that's what we love to read about. So well done, Scott Dochterman. Thanks for doing this. We'll catch up with you next week. Have a great week, Doc. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
Trent kind of back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. As we wrap things up here, big night coming up this evening. It's Kate versus Caitlin. Looking forward to this one as the Las Vegas Aces, they move it into T-Mobile, the big arena, as Caitlin Clark is coming to town with her Indiana Fever. We've seen this Indiana team play much better, but the stories of these two young women. For Caitlin Clark, the superstar coming in, number 3 player in the country in her recruiting class, and what she was able to do and what she built Iowa women's basketball into was absolutely incredible. And then her running mate, player that had been there, player that had been around a little bit more. They became great friends, roommates, and was just there to support Caitlin Clark at the WNBA draft. And now what she's turned into, being drafted by the two-time defending champion in the WNBA, the Las Vegas Aces, going into a spot that seemed like great story. She didn't think she was even going to be drafted. She was there for Caitlin. And then she hears her name called. And that scene at the draft was just absolutely incredible. And then she goes to camp, and it felt like Kate Martin, all right, get a cup of coffee, get a little bit of understanding about what the league is, and then she'll start her coaching career. No. And then the cuts are happening, and she's still around. And it gets deeper and deeper into it, and she's still hanging around and eventually wins a roster spot. Okay, that's great. And that's another incredible story. But it goes further. And now she has been an impactful bench player for the Las Vegas Aces. We're not talking about one of the worst teams in the league here. We're talking about a former champion. We're talking about a team that is at an incredibly high level. We knew Kate Martin as a player, do everything. They called her the glue for a reason. Going to be fun to see them out on the court. And how much better is this Indiana Fever team than they were just a couple of weeks ago? Vegas is really good. And Vegas, maybe more importantly, is really healthy right now. You can find right now the point spread 13.5 over at FanDuel for this one tonight. The Vegas Aces are the big favorite. Looking forward to that and looking forward to more Hawkeye content and leading you into the 4th of July. We got a lot of recruiting to get into later on this week. Our recruiting analyst here at Locked On is going to be joining us. Brian, will talk with him a little bit about the latest commitments in the class of 2025. We got you covered on the football front. Also have a question to pose a little bit later in the week. Who has the most pressure on this Iowa football team coming up in the 2024 football season? We'll tackle all that and a whole lot more coming up the rest of the week. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.